Number 1. The 1963 Ford Fairlane. In my opinion, this 1963 Ford Fairlane is the kind of old-school driver's car that will appeal most to someone who values character, simplicity, and a hands-on classic car experience over comfort features or high-end restoration work. It doesn't sound like a polished showpiece, and honestly, that may be part of its charm. This looks more like a straightforward vintage Ford that has already been set up to be enjoyed on the road, with just enough performance flavor to keep things interesting. The Fairlane has long been one of those underappreciated early 1960s Ford platforms. It doesn't always get the same spotlight as a Mustang or a later Torino, but that is part of what makes them appealing. They are lighter, more compact than many full-size cars of the era, and they carry a clean, no-nonsense design that works especially well when paired with a V8. A 1963 Fairlane has a very distinct look, with its crisp body lines and simple proportions that reflect the transitional styling of early 1960s American cars. According to the seller, this example runs and drives great, which is one of the biggest positives in the listing. A classic car does not need to be perfect to be enjoyable, but it does need to feel dependable enough that you can actually use it. That is what makes this Fairlane sound appealing. It is being presented as a functional driver rather than a project that has to be trailered home and immediately torn apart. Under the hood is a 302 V8 fitted with a cam, which tells me this car probably has a little more attitude than a stock Fairlane would have had when it left the factory. The Ford 302 is one of the easiest classic V8s to live with because it has strong aftermarket support, a huge parts supply, and a reputation for being durable when put together properly. Add a camshaft into the mix, and the car likely has a more aggressive idle and a stronger personality than a standard small-block cruiser. It may not be a full race build, but it sounds like the kind of setup that gives the car a little extra excitement every time you fire it up. Another interesting feature is the B&M slap shifter, which adds a more performance-oriented feel to the automatic transmission setup. It is not something you would expect in a stock early 1960s Fairlane, but it fits the overall personality of a car that seems to have been built more for fun than for originality points. Personally, I think touches like that can make a classic feel more engaging, especially for someone who wants an old car with a bit of hot rod flavor rather than a factory-correct restoration. The seller is also refreshingly honest about the car's current needs. It reportedly needs the carburetor cleaned and currently requires 2 front tires, although the seller says those may be replaced. I actually appreciate that kind of transparency because it gives a clearer picture of what the next owner should expect. Neither of those items sounds especially serious, and both are relatively manageable compared to the larger structural or drivetrain issues that often come with vintage cars. One thing buyers should keep in mind is that the car does not have power steering or power brakes. For some people, that will be a downside, especially if they want an easy cruiser for modern traffic. But for others, it is part of the appeal. A manual steering, manual brake classic car offers a more direct and old-school driving experience, and in a lighter intermediate platform like a Fairlane, it can actually make the car feel more connected and mechanical in a good way. At $15,000 or best offer, I think this 1963 Ford Fairlane sits in an interesting place. It is not being marketed as a fully restored collector piece, but rather as a solid, usable classic with a V8, a few performance-minded touches, and some honest imperfections. In my view, that makes it appealing to the buyer who wants a real vintage Ford to drive, tinker with, and enjoy without the pressure of owning something too pristine to use. If the body and overall structure are as solid as the seller suggests, this could be a very fun and reasonably affordable entry into the early Ford muscle and cruiser world. Number 2. 1960 Chevrolet Impala Bubble Top. In my opinion, this 1960 Chevrolet Impala Bubble Top is the kind of classic that instantly grabs attention because it combines one of General Motors' most iconic rooflines with a much more usable modernized drivetrain. The 1960 Impala Sport Coupe is already a standout car on styling alone, but this one goes a step further by being built as a real driver rather than a fragile restoration piece that only comes out for special occasions. Located in Schuylkill Haven, Pennsylvania, and associated with a dealer in nearby Orwigsburg, this Impala is listed at $52,490. It is finished in Roman red over a red and white checkerboard bench seat interior, giving it the bold, unmistakably American look that suits a 1960 Chevrolet perfectly. The bubble-top roofline is really the star of the show here. With its dramatic wraparound rear glass and airy pillarless profile, it remains one of the most recognizable and desirable body styles GM ever produced. In my opinion, that roof alone is enough to put this car on many collectors' wish lists. What makes this particular Impala especially interesting is the fact that it has been set up for actual road use rather than originality. Under the hood is a 350 cubic inch Chevrolet V8 topped with a Holley 4-barrel carburetor and Edelbrock Torquer 2.0 intake. Backing it is a turbo 400 automatic transmission, and power goes to a Ford 9-inch rear end. That is a very practical and proven combination. In my opinion, this is one of the biggest strengths of the car, because it replaces the complexity and limitations of an original 1960 drivetrain with components that are easy to maintain, widely supported, and strong enough for regular driving. The car also benefits from upgrades that make it more comfortable and confidence-inspiring on the road. It has power steering, power disc brakes front and rear, and air conditioning, all of which significantly improve the ownership experience compared to a stock early 1960s full-size Chevrolet. That matters because a car like this is at its best when it can actually be driven on warm weekends, cruise nights, and long scenic trips instead of just being looked at. Inside, the Impala presents as a clean and inviting cruiser. The seats, carpet, door panels, headliner, and dash are all described as being in good shape, and the seller states that the horn, lights, gauges, indicators, interior lights, and wipers all function properly. A car cover and spare tire are also included, which adds a bit of practical value. At the same time, I appreciate that the seller is very clear about what this car is and what it is not. The cowl tag confirms it began life as a real V8 Impala Sport Coupe, but it was originally ermine white with a black and white interior. The current Roman red paint, checkerboard interior, and drivetrain are all later changes, so this is not a numbers-matching restoration. In my opinion, that honesty actually helps the listing, because it sets proper expectations and makes it easier to evaluate the car as a driver-focused restomod rather than a factory-correct collector piece. The seller also discloses several cosmetic and minor functional flaws, including a non-working clock and radio, a paint bubble near the hood by the windshield, a paint crack behind the rear glass, a blemish on the rear quarter panel, and delaminate rear passenger window glass. None of those issues necessarily ruin the car, but they do remind buyers that this is not a concours-level show car. Instead, it is a handsome, usable classic with a few imperfections that come with being enjoyed rather than hidden away. Personally, I think that balance is exactly what makes this Impala appealing. It has the presence and visual drama of a high-end collector car, but it is powered by a simple, proven small-block Chevy setup and equipped with modern driving conveniences. That makes it the kind of car you could confidently take to a local cruise night, a weekend road trip, or a casual car show without constantly worrying about preserving every original part. Overall, this 1960 Chevrolet Impala bubble top appears to be a well-sorted driver-quality restomod built around a 350 V8, TH400 automatic, Ford 9-inch rear, 4-wheel disc brakes, power steering, and air conditioning. In my opinion, it is best viewed as a stylish road-ready cruiser that sacrifices factory originality in favor of reliability, comfort, and drivability. An approach that makes a lot of sense for a car meant to be enjoyed on the open road rather than stored away as a museum piece. Number 3, this 1962 Chevrolet Bel Air is not just a restored classic, it's a fully reimagined high-end restomod built to a level that goes far beyond a typical weekend cruiser. From the description alone, it's clear this car was assembled with serious money, serious planning, and a very clear vision of blending early 1960s Chevrolet styling with modern performance and comfort. Finished in Pacific blue metallic with a matching blue interior, this Bel Air appears to strike that rare balance between show car presentation and real-world drivability. The seller describes it as a professional quality frame-off restoration with meticulous attention to detail, and the long list of upgrades certainly supports that claim. It's also said to have been featured as a Billet Specialties catalog cover car and in Chevy High Performance magazine, which immediately places it in a different category from the average modified Bel Air. Under the hood sits a GM LS2 fuel-injected V8 rated at 445 horsepower, a major upgrade over the original drivetrain and one of the most popular modern swaps in the classic Chevrolet world. The LS2 is known for strong performance, reliability, and excellent part support, making it a smart choice for a car that's meant to be both fast and dependable. Behind it is a Tremec T56 6-speed manual transmission, which completely transforms the driving experience compared to a traditional automatic or older 4-speed setup. That alone tells you this Bel Air was built for someone who actually enjoys rowing through gears rather than just parking at shows. Power is sent to a quick performance 9-inch rear end with 3.89 gears, giving the car a strong performance-oriented foundation. Supporting the drivetrain are full-length headers, Flowmaster mufflers, a Griffin radiator, SPAL electric fans, and an Eddy Motorsport serpentine system, components that suggest this build was engineered with both power and reliability in mind, not just appearance. The suspension and braking package are equally serious. This Bel Air rides on a custom air suspension system with dual V-air compressors and a 5-gallon aluminum tank, allowing the car to adjust ride height while still delivering a modern stance and better road manners. Braking is handled by bare 6-piston 4-wheel disc brakes with 14-inch drilled and slotted rotors, which is a massive improvement over anything the car would have originally had in 1962. Inside, the build appears to mix factory-inspired style with upgraded comfort and technology. The interior uses OEM-style reproduction trim and carpet, but adds modern conveniences like vintage air climate control, a tilt steering column, upgraded gauges, air ride controls, Bluetooth audio, and a custom sound system with Kenwood speakers and subwoofers. Dynamat insulation also suggests the builder wanted the car to feel refined inside, not just loud and dramatic. The 20-inch billet specialties Bonneville S wheels complete the look and make it clear that this Bel Air leans heavily toward pro touring or high-end custom territory rather than original restoration. Every part of the build sounds designed to elevate the car beyond nostalgia and into something much more modern in performance, comfort, and visual impact. In my opinion, this is the kind of car you buy when you want a classic Chevrolet body but have no interest in stock-level performance or old car compromises. It has the visual charm of a 1962 Bel Air, but mechanically it sounds closer to a modern muscle car with show-level detailing. That's a very expensive combination to build from scratch, which is why cars like this can command serious money when done properly. At an asking price of $85,000, this Bel Air is obviously not aimed at entry-level buyers. But when you factor in the LS2 swap, T56 6-speed, custom air ride, bare brakes, premium wheels, upgraded interior, magazine exposure, and the cost of a proper frame-off build, the number starts to make more sense. For someone looking for a professionally built, highly detailed restomod that can compete at shows and still deliver a genuinely exciting driving experience, this 1962 Chevrolet Bel Air appears to be a top-tier offering. Number 4. 1967 Pontiac GTO. The 1967 Pontiac GTO is widely regarded as one of the true icons of the American muscle car era. By the late 1960s, the GTO had already earned its reputation as one of the cars that helped define the muscle car formula. Mid-size body, big V8 power, aggressive styling, and a driving experience that was all about torque and attitude. Even today, the 67 model remains one of the most desirable GTOs ever built, thanks to its clean body lines, stacked headlights, and unmistakable road presence. This particular example appears to be far more than just an older restoration. Based on the seller's description, it has undergone an extremely extensive rebuild with an incredible amount of new metal, fresh components, and mechanical attention. Finished in fire bronze metallic over a black interior, the car carries a rich, period-correct look that feels both elegant and muscular at the same time. In my opinion, that color works exceptionally well on a 1967 GTO because it gives the car a slightly more refined presence while still allowing the aggressive body styling to stand out. Under the hood is a 400 cubic inch Pontiac V8 that has been rebuilt and upgraded with a mild performance cam, Edelbrock 4-barrel carburetor, electronic ignition, and supporting mechanical improvements. The seller notes that the engine is likely the original YS code 400 block from when the car was equipped with an automatic transmission, although the car is now paired with a Muncie 4-speed manual. That swap alone makes the car far more engaging to drive and better matches the personality most enthusiasts want from a GTO. The drivetrain setup sounds very well thought out, with a posy rear axle, balanced driveshaft, new U-joints, and a stainless 2.5-inch dual exhaust system. Combined with power steering and power brakes, this GTO seems to offer both muscle and usability rather than being a difficult, temperamental old car. The seller even claims the car drives like new, with no rattles, squeaks, or vibrations, which is a bold statement but one that suggests a very high level of build quality. What really sets this car apart, though, is the amount of structural restoration that reportedly went into it. According to the listing, virtually every major chassis and body panel has been replaced, including the floors, trunk, quarters, rockers, wheel wells, and multiple structural sections underneath. That kind of restoration is not cheap, not easy, and definitely not common. It sounds like the builder approached this project with the mindset of creating a long-term, high-quality car rather than just making it look good for resale. The interior has also been completely redone, and the seller emphasizes that the car has only been driven around 800 miles since restoration. That low mileage, combined with the detailed mechanical upkeep and careful storage, suggests the GTO is still in very fresh condition. Personally, what I like most about this car is that it seems to combine the best parts of both worlds. It still has the look and soul of a genuine 1967 GTO, but it's been rebuilt to a level that should make it feel tighter, cleaner, and more dependable than many so-called original cars. It may not be a factory-correct concours restoration, but for someone who wants a sharp, powerful, and extremely well-finished driver, that may actually be a better fit. Overall, I think this 1967 Pontiac GTO presents itself as a serious muscle car with substantial restoration work, a strong 400 V8, a 4-speed manual, and excellent visual appeal. At an asking price of $54,200, it's clearly aimed at buyers who want more than just a project or average weekend cruiser. For the right enthusiast, this looks like the kind of GTO that could deliver both pride of ownership and a genuinely exciting driving experience for years to come. Number 5. This 1965 Pontiac Grand Prix. This 1965 Pontiac Grand Prix is a great example of a mid-1960s American personal luxury coupe that still knows how to make an impression without trying too hard. Located in Machesney Park, Illinois, and priced at $30,000, this car combines big-body Pontiac styling, V8 power, factory air conditioning, and a long list of maintenance and comfort updates that make it sound more like a car you can enjoy now rather than just admire from a garage. Finished in fontaine blue over a matching blue interior, this Grand Prix has the kind of color combination that immediately fits the era. It looks classy, unmistakably mid-60s, and gives the car a very authentic period feel. Pontiac was doing a great job in this era of blending performance image with upscale styling, and the Grand Prix was one of the best examples of that formula. It had the long hood, clean roofline, and upscale trim of a luxury coupe, but still carried enough muscle car DNA to feel like more than just a boulevard cruiser. Under the hood is a 389 cubic inch V8 topped with a 4-barrel carburetor, which is exactly the kind of engine you want to see in a car like this. It offers the torque and sound that fit the Grand Prix personality, and in this case, it's paired with factory air conditioning, which the seller says still blows cold. That may sound like a small detail, but in an older full-size coupe, working air conditioning makes a huge difference in actual usability, especially if the next owner plans to drive it in warmer weather rather than just trailer it to local shows. What makes this listing stronger than a typical nice old car ad is the amount of work that has already been done. The seller mentions that much of the interior has been replaced, and several important mechanical and comfort-related components have already been addressed, including the fuel pump, aluminum radiator, heater core, front suspension, steering box, and wiper motor. It has also received sound deadening with Dynamat, a front-end realignment, a tune-up, and even a fresh oil change in June of 2026. That kind of upkeep matters, because it suggests this Grand Prix has been maintained with actual driving in mind, not just parked and polished. The car also rides on Coker Firestone Redline tires, which is a nice visual touch and one that really suits a mid-60s Pontiac. Small details like that help preserve the vintage look without making the car feel over-restored or too modernized. The seller does note a few minor paint chips on the edge of a door, but honestly, that doesn't bother me much on a car like this. If anything, it reinforces the idea that this is a real driver-quality classic, not a fragile show queen that you're afraid to touch. In my opinion, that's what makes this Grand Prix attractive. It seems to strike a very nice balance between originality, comfort, and usability. It has the right engine, the right look, a strong maintenance list, and enough refinement to be something you could genuinely enjoy on the road. It's not the kind of Pontiac that gets all the spotlight like a GTO, but for someone who appreciates full-size GM coupes with style, presence, and V8 character, this one has a lot going for it. Overall, this 1965 Pontiac Grand Prix looks like a well-kept and thoughtfully updated classic that still delivers the charm of a true 1960s personal luxury car. With its 389 V8, cold air conditioning, striking color combination, and solid list of recent work, it feels like the kind of car that could be driven, shown, and enjoyed right away without losing the personality that makes it special in the first place. Number 6. The 1965 Dodge Coronet Post Car. In my opinion, this 1965 Dodge Coronet is exactly the kind of old-school Mopar street machine that appeals to buyers who want a car with attitude, serious V8 power, and a purpose-built performance feel rather than a soft, factory-stock cruiser. It is not being presented as a delicate, numbers-matching showpiece. Instead, it sounds like a well-thought-out muscle-era build designed to be fast, aggressive, and unmistakably old-school in the best possible way. The first thing that stands out is the body style. A 1965 Coronet postcar already has a tough, no-nonsense look compared to many of the more common hardtop muscle cars from the era. There is something about a postcar that immediately gives it a more serious street and strip personality. It looks lighter, simpler, and more purpose-driven, which fits perfectly with the way this particular car has been built. Under the hood is where this Dodge really makes its case. Power comes from a 440 cubic inch Mopar V8 bored .030 over, which means this is not some mild cruiser engine meant only for casual weekend driving. The addition of a hydraulic roller cam suggests a combination of stronger performance and better drivability than an older flat tappet setup. In practical terms, that usually means a car that can make real power while still being more manageable and dependable on the street. For a big block Mopar, that is a very appealing combination. Backing the engine is a 4-speed manual transmission, and to me that is one of the biggest highlights of the entire package. A big block Mopar with a 4-speed automatically feels more serious because it puts the driver directly in control of the car's personality. It is one thing to have horsepower, but it is another thing entirely to be rowing through the gears yourself with a strong V8 pulling up front. That is the kind of experience that makes a car memorable every time you drive it. The rear end setup is also worth noting. This Coronet is fitted with an 8 3/4-inch rear axle using the desirable 742 case and 3.73 gears. For Mopar enthusiasts, that is a very solid combination. The 742 case is respected for its strength, and 3.73 gearing gives the car a good balance between street manners and aggressive acceleration. It should be responsive enough to feel exciting without making highway driving completely miserable. Another important detail is that the car has been frame-tied. In my opinion, that tells you this build was taken seriously. Frame connectors are not just cosmetic modifications. They improve chassis rigidity and help the car handle the torque of a strong big block setup more effectively. On older unibody Mopars, that kind of reinforcement can make a meaningful difference in how the car feels under hard acceleration and how well it holds together over time. The wheel and tire setup also reinforces the dual-purpose nature of the car. It currently sits on Craigar 15x6 aluminum wheels with BF Goodrich radial T/A tires, which gives it the classic street machine look most people want on a mid-1960s muscle car. But the seller also includes 15x8 steel wheels wrapped in Mickey Thompson drag radials, which immediately tells me this car was built with more than just cruising in mind. That second wheel and tire package gives the next owner the option to lean into the car's drag strip side whenever they want. The seller describes the body as pristine, and if that proves accurate, it adds major value to the overall package. A powerful engine and a good transmission are great, but with a vintage Mopar, body condition matters just as much because rust and structural repair costs can get out of hand quickly. A clean, solid post-body Coronet with a strong big block and manual transmission is not something you come across every day. Personally, I think what makes this car appealing is how honest it seems about its purpose. It is not pretending to be a concours restoration or a factory-correct museum piece. It is a performance-oriented Coronet built to look right, sound right, and go hard when asked. That kind of car will not appeal to everyone, but for the buyer who wants a vintage Mopar with real street presence and the hardware to back it up, it checks a lot of boxes. At $36,000 firm, this 1965 Dodge Coronet postcar is clearly being positioned as a serious build rather than a budget project. In my view, the value here comes from the complete package: big block 440 power, hydraulic roller cam, 4-speed transmission, strong rear axle, frame-tied chassis, and the right mix of street and drag strip personality. For someone who wants a classic Mopar that feels raw, mechanical, and genuinely built to perform, this Coronet sounds like a very compelling machine. Number 7. 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 XL Convertible. In my opinion, this 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 XL Convertible is the kind of classic American drop-top that checks a lot of boxes for someone who wants a stylish cruiser with V8 power, open-air driving, and enough recent updates to make ownership easier. It is not being presented as a radical restomod or a concours-level restoration. Instead, it feels like a well-kept driver-oriented classic that is meant to be enjoyed on the road, at local shows, and on weekend cruises. Located in Kearneysville, West Virginia, this Fairlane 500 XL Convertible is listed at $28,000 and is described as being in good used condition. The 500 XL trim is an important part of the appeal because it represented the more upscale and sporty version of the Fairlane lineup. In the mid-1960s, The XL designation gave buyers a bit more style and presence than a standard Fairlane, and today that helps the car stand out as something a little more special than an ordinary convertible. Under the hood is a 289 cubic inch Ford the 5th 8 paired with an automatic transmission. In my opinion, that is a very fitting drivetrain for a car like this. The 289 is one of Ford's most proven small block engines, known for being dependable, easy to maintain, and lively enough to make a mid-size convertible enjoyable without becoming temperamental. Paired with an automatic, it gives the Fairlane a relaxed, easy-going character that suits top-down cruising much better than an aggressive race-style setup would. The seller mentions a new Holley carburetor along with many additional new parts, which suggests that the mechanical side of the car has received recent attention. Even though the listing does not go into a full service history, a new carburetor is often a meaningful upgrade on a classic V8 because it can improve drivability, throttle response, and overall reliability when compared with an aging or worn original unit. One of the biggest highlights here is the convertible top system. The seller states that the top motor and related components are new, which is a major positive in my opinion. On an older convertible, the top mechanism is one of the most important comfort and convenience features, and repairs can become expensive if the system is neglected. Knowing that the motor and components have already been addressed makes the car much more appealing as a ready-to-enjoy summer cruiser. The car also wears brand new Cougar S/S wheels and new BF Goodrich tires. That combination is a classic muscle-era styling choice and works especially well on a 1966 Fairlane. Cougar S/S wheels have long been associated with vintage American performance cars, and in my opinion they give this convertible a more confident, period-correct street presence without looking overdone. Paired with fresh tires, they also suggest the car is intended to be driven rather than simply parked. What I like about this Fairlane is that it seems to strike a good middle ground. It has enough updates to feel fresh and usable, but it still sounds like a classic Ford convertible at heart rather than a heavily modified custom build. For many buyers, that is actually the sweet spot. You get the charm of a 1960s convertible, the sound of a small block V8, and the comfort of an automatic transmission, all without stepping into the much higher prices associated with Mustangs, big block muscle cars, or full restorations. Personally, I think the strongest appeal of this car is its simplicity. It does not need a huge horsepower number or a long list of race parts to be enjoyable. A mid-size Ford convertible with a healthy 289, a functioning power top system, fresh wheels and tires, and a clean presentation already offers exactly what many classic car buyers are looking for: something fun, stylish, and usable. Overall, this 1966 Ford Fairlane 500 XL convertible appears to be a well-maintained classic drop-top equipped with a 289 V8, automatic transmission, new Holley carburetor, fresh Cougar S/S wheels, new BF Goodrich tires, and a newly updated convertible top system. In my opinion, it is best suited for someone who wants a genuine 1960s American convertible that can be driven, shown, and enjoyed with minimal drama, an attractive blend of vintage Ford style, V8 sound, and relaxed cruising character. Number 8. This 1967 Plymouth Barracuda looks like the kind of classic Mopar that sits right in the middle between a usable driver and a project with serious upside. It's not being presented as a flawless show car, but rather as a solid-running early Barracuda that has already received a long list of meaningful upgrades while still leaving room for the next owner to take it further. At the heart of the car is a 360 cubic inch V8 paired with an automatic transmission, a combination that gives this Barracuda a more muscular personality than it would have had in stock form. The seller says it runs and drives well and is comfortable cruising at 70 miles per hour on the interstate, which is an important detail because it suggests the car is more than just a local toy. It sounds like something you could actually get in and enjoy on longer drives. Mechanically, quite a bit of work has already been done. The engine has been upgraded with an Edelbrock Performer intake and an Edelbrock carburetor, both common performance parts that usually improve drivability and throttle response on a street build like this. The fuel system has also been addressed with a new fuel tank, and the seller mentions new brakes all around, including a front disc brake conversion. That's one of the most useful upgrades you can make to an older car like this, because it immediately improves confidence behind the wheel and makes the car feel more capable in modern traffic. The rear end has also seen attention, with new 5-on-4.5 axles and differential-related updates, which may help broaden wheel options and strengthen the driveline. On top of that, the car has new wheels and tires, making it look more sorted visually while also saving the next owner from having to immediately budget for rubber and wheel replacement. Inside, this Barracuda has already been freshened in several areas. The rear seat upholstery is new, The front seats have received new foam, and the car also has new carpet along with sound-deadening material. Those details matter because they make the car feel less like an old worn-out project and more like a classic you can actually spend time in without it feeling unfinished. That said, the seller is upfront about the bodywork it still needs. The lower quarter panels and outer rockers need attention, but the big advantage is that replacement full quarters and outer rockers have already been purchased and will go with the sale. That changes the equation quite a bit. Instead of hunting for sheet metal after the purchase, the next owner already has some of the expensive and hard-to-source body parts in hand. In my opinion, that's what makes this Barracuda interesting. It's not priced like a finished restoration, but it also isn't a basket case shell. It's a running, driving V8 Mopar with upgraded brakes, fuel system, intake, carb, interior work, and included body panels. In other words, a lot of the expensive groundwork has already been started. The next owner would still need to deal with the rust repair and body finishing, but they'd be stepping into a project that's much further along than most affordable Mopars on the market. At $18,000, this 1967 Barracuda feels like a car that could make sense for the right buyer, especially someone who likes Mopars, wants a driver now, and doesn't mind doing bodywork over time. It may not be perfect today, but it sounds like a very honest, very usable early Barracuda with the right mix of upgrades, potential, and attitude. Number 9. 1958 Lincoln Continental Mark III. The 1958 Lincoln Continental Mark III convertible is one of those cars that doesn't just arrive, it makes an entrance. Built during one of the most dramatic periods in American automotive design, the Mark III represented Lincoln's top-tier luxury vision at a time when size, chrome, and presence mattered just as much as engineering. It's a car from the late 1950s that feels unapologetically extravagant, and in convertible form, it becomes even more special. This particular example is finished in turquoise, a color that suits the personality of the car perfectly. On a 1958 Lincoln, a bright period-correct color like this doesn't feel flashy in a modern sense. It feels appropriate, elegant, and exactly in line with the optimism and bold styling of the era. The car's massive proportions, sculpted bodywork, and unmistakable front-end design already give it enormous presence, but the turquoise paint likely makes it even more memorable in person. According to the seller, this Mark III convertible has been owned by the same person for more than 40 years, which is a major point in its favor. Long-term ownership often says a lot about a classic car, especially one as large, complex, and expensive to maintain as a late 1950s Lincoln. It suggests the car wasn't simply passed around from owner to owner, but instead stayed in the hands of someone who genuinely cared about preserving it. The listing also mentions that the car has always been stored indoors, which is another encouraging detail. Cars of this size and vintage can be especially vulnerable to weather, rust, and trim deterioration, so long-term contained storage likely played a huge role in preserving the vehicle's condition. The seller describes it as a very nice example and notes that everything works, including the rear window, which may sound like a small detail but is actually meaningful on a classic convertible with complex power accessories. With around 50,000 miles showing, this Lincoln appears to have been driven enough to be enjoyed, but not so much that it has been used up. The fact that the car is still said to have all of its major features functioning is especially impressive considering the amount of electrical and mechanical complexity these luxury Lincolns carried for their time. What I personally like most about this car is that it represents a completely different kind of classic American experience compared to the muscle cars that usually dominate the conversation. This isn't about quarter-mile times or aggressive camshafts. It's about style, comfort, occasion, and the feeling of driving something that was built to be one of the most prestigious cars on the road in its day. Overall, I think this 1958 Lincoln Continental Mark III convertible is a very compelling full-size luxury classic. The combination of dramatic styling, convertible desirability, long-term ownership, and reportedly functional features makes it far more than just a big old cruiser. At an asking price of $58,000, it seems best suited for a buyer who appreciates rare 1950s American luxury and wants a car that delivers presence, nostalgia, and genuine collector appeal every time it leaves the garage. Number 10. This 1970 Mercury Cougar XR7. This 1970 Mercury Cougar XR7 is one of those classic cars that feels a little more upscale and a little more distinctive than the average Mussolera coupe. Listed out of Copiague, New York, and priced at $24,500, this Cougar stands out not only because of its condition, but also because it combines Mercury's more refined styling with a desirable V8, luxury features, and a color combination you simply don't see every day. Finished in medium blue metallic over a matching blue interior, this car immediately leans into the premium side of the Cougar's personality. The seller describes it as a rare blue-on-blue example, and that combination really fits the XR7 identity. While many muscle cars from this period were ordered in aggressive colors with stripped-down interiors, the Cougar XR7 was Mercury's way of offering performance with a little more sophistication. It had the long hood and sporty stance buyers wanted, but wrapped it in a package that felt more mature and more upscale than a typical pony car. Under the hood is what the seller describes as a rare M-Code 351 Cleveland 4-barrel V8, paired with an automatic transmission. That's a strong combination for a car like this. The 351 Cleveland is one of Ford's most respected performance engines from the era, known for its breathing ability and strong power potential, and in a Cougar XR7 it gives the car a solid muscle car backbone without sacrificing drivability. If this really is an authentic M-Code car, that definitely adds to its appeal because it places the car in a more desirable category among Cougar enthusiasts. The seller also notes that the odometer shows just over 44,000 miles and states that this mileage is believed to be original based on information from the previous owner. As always with older cars, that's something a buyer would want to verify as much as possible, but if accurate, it certainly helps explain why the car appears to have been preserved so well. Equipment-wise, this Cougar checks a lot of the right boxes. It features hideaway headlights, factory bucket seats, a center console, power steering, power brakes, and one of the most recognizable Mercury styling cues of the era, the sequential rear turn signals. It also includes an analog clock and performance tachometer, which add a little extra personality to the dashboard. The seller describes the interior as plush leather, and if that condition is as strong as advertised, it only reinforces the XR7's role as Mercury's more luxurious answer to the Mustang-based performance coupe formula. In my opinion, what makes this Cougar especially appealing is that it offers something slightly different from the usual muscle car choices. A 1970 Mustang, Chevelle, or Camaro might get more instant attention, but the Cougar XR7 brings its own style to the table. It feels more refined, a little more exclusive, and in this case, possibly rarer depending on how the options and engine code decode. The blue-on-blue presentation only adds to that uniqueness, because it gives the car a real period-correct luxury performance vibe rather than the more common blacked-out muscle car look. Overall, this 1970 Mercury Cougar XR7 appears to be a very attractive blend of performance, comfort, and rarity. With its M-Code 351 Cleveland, upscale trim, hideaway headlights, and striking factory-style presentation, it looks like the kind of classic that could appeal to both Mercury collectors and buyers who simply want a vintage American coupe that stands apart from the crowd. Number 11. The 1968 Pontiac GTO. In my opinion, this 1968 Pontiac GTO is one of the more intriguing opportunities in this lineup because it seems to sit right in the middle between a real collectible muscle car and a usable project you can still enjoy immediately. It is not being advertised as a flawless, fully restored showpiece, and honestly, that may be exactly what makes it appealing. Instead, it sounds like a genuine numbers-matching GTO that still runs and drives well, has strong fundamentals underneath, and leaves room for the next owner to improve the cosmetics over time. The most important detail in the listing is that this is described as a real 242 code GTO with matching numbers. For Pontiac enthusiasts, that matters a lot. The 1968 GTO is already a desirable muscle car thanks to its styling, performance heritage, and place in the golden era of American V8s, but having a true GTO rather than a clone or tribute car makes a major difference in long-term appeal. If the matching numbers claim checks out, then this car starts from a very solid place in terms of authenticity. Power comes from Pontiac's 400 cubic inch V8, which is exactly the kind of engine you want to see in a late 1960s GTO. The 400 has always been one of Pontiac's signature power plants, known for delivering broad torque, a deep exhaust note, and the kind of effortless acceleration that made these cars famous in the first place. In this case, it is paired with an automatic transmission, and the mention of the Hurst, his and hers shifter is a great period-correct detail. That dual-gate shifter is one of those features that instantly gives the car more personality because it blends the convenience of an automatic with a more performance-oriented feel from the driver's seat. The car also benefits from power steering and power disc brakes, two features that make a real difference if the next owner actually plans to use the car rather than just display it. A late 1960s muscle car can be a very different experience with those options versus without them, especially in modern traffic. The seller says the car runs and drives, which is important because it means this GTO is not just a static project. It sounds like something you could enjoy while slowly bringing it up to a higher cosmetic standard. Another encouraging detail is the claim that the car came from California and is described as super solid underneath, with solid floors and a good frame. In my opinion, that is one of the biggest positives in the entire listing. Cosmetic flaws can be fixed. Paint and bodywork can be redone. But when a classic muscle car has major structural rust, the cost and complexity of putting it right can climb quickly. If the underbody really is as solid as advertised, then this GTO has the kind of foundation buyers should be looking for. The seller is also fairly honest about the car's weaknesses, which I actually appreciate. The paint and body are rated at about a 6 out of 10, and the car is said to need paint and bodywork. The headlights are also not working, and the interior is described simply as decent rather than excellent. To me, that honesty helps frame the car correctly. This is not a perfect restoration, and it is not priced like one. It is a real GTO with strong bones and good core components, but it still needs attention if someone wants to take it to the next level. The new redline tires are a nice touch because they fit the era of the car and help preserve the proper muscle car look. Small details like that can make a difference in how a classic presents, especially when the car is otherwise a bit rough around the edges cosmetically. It shows that someone still cared about maintaining the right visual character rather than simply throwing on whatever was cheapest. Personally, I think this GTO's biggest strength is its balance of authenticity, usability, and potential. You are not looking at a heavily modified car with questionable history, and you are not looking at a completely disassembled restoration project either. You are looking at a real 1968 GTO with its original identity intact, a Pontiac 400 under the hood, desirable factory-style equipment, and what sounds like a very solid structure underneath. Yes, it needs paint and body attention, and yes, there are some electrical issues to sort out, but that is exactly why it may represent an opportunity for the right buyer. At $22,500 cash, this 1968 Pontiac GTO strikes me as a car that could make a lot of sense for someone who has always wanted a real GTO but does not want to pay top-tier money for a fully restored example. In my view, if the numbers-matching status and structural condition check out in person, this could be a very appealing way to get into a genuine Pontiac muscle car with room to improve it on your own terms. Number 12. 1963 Chevy 2 Nova. In my opinion, this 1963 Chevy 2 Nova is the kind of classic that sits right at the intersection of vintage street machine, drag-ready hardware, and real-world drivability. It is not being marketed as a factory-correct restoration or a mild weekend cruiser. Instead, it sounds like a purpose-built performance car that still retains enough practicality to be enjoyed beyond the track. For buyers who like compact early 1960s Chevrolets but want something with much more muscle than stock, this Nova looks like a very serious package. Located in Fremont, Michigan, this 1963 Chevy 2 Nova hardtop is listed at $50,000 and is described as being in good condition. At first glance, the early Chevy 2 body style already gives it plenty of appeal. These cars are smaller, lighter, and more understated than many later muscle cars, which makes them especially attractive when they are built with real power underneath. In my opinion, that sleeper-like quality is one of the strongest parts of the Chevy 2 formula. It can look compact and clean on the outside while hiding a far more aggressive mechanical setup than most people expect. The heart of the build is a 383 cubic inch small block Chevrolet V8. That is a very popular and proven combination because it offers noticeably more torque and power than a standard 350 while still keeping the familiar small block architecture. In a lightweight car like a 1963 Nova, a healthy 383 can deliver extremely strong acceleration without the extra bulk of a big block conversion. In my opinion, that makes it one of the best engine choices for a car like this, enough power to be genuinely fast, but still compact and relatively easy to service. Backing the engine is a turbo 400 automatic transmission paired with a gear vendor's overdrive unit. That detail is especially important because it changes the personality of the car in a good way. A turbo 400 is known for strength and durability, which makes perfect sense in a high-performance street or strip build. The addition of gear vendor's overdrive, however, adds another layer of usability by allowing lower cruising RPM on the highway. In my opinion, that is one of the smartest upgrades on the entire car because it gives the Nova a much broader operating range. It can still be aggressive under acceleration, but it does not have to feel overly busy or harsh during longer drives. The rear end is a Ford 9-inch, another major plus in my view. The Ford 9-inch is one of the most trusted rear axle setups in the performance world because of its strength, parts availability, and ability to handle serious horsepower. When you see a TH 409-inch rear together in a car like this, it usually tells you the build was designed with durability in mind, not just appearance. The braking system has also been upgraded with disc brakes, which is an important improvement for a car with this level of performance potential. Early compact cars can feel a little under-equipped when they retain stock braking systems, so a disc brake conversion makes a lot of sense. It improves stopping confidence and makes the car more practical for spirited street use. Another standout detail is the mention of an 8.50 certification with removable door bars. That immediately tells experienced buyers that this Nova was built with drag strip capability in mind. An 8.50 certification typically refers to track safety requirements for very fast elapsed times, meaning this is not a casual bolt-on hot rod. It suggests the chassis and cage were built to support serious performance. The removable door bars are a particularly nice touch because they preserve easier cabin access when the car is not being used in competition. In my opinion, that makes the Nova more livable while still maintaining its race-ready credentials. The RC Comp wheels also reinforce the car's performance identity. They fit the style of a modernized street and strip build and likely help the Nova put its power down while giving it a more aggressive stance. Even without a long list of cosmetic details, the wheel choice alone hints that this car was assembled with a very clear purpose. Personally, I think the strongest appeal of this 1963 Nova is its balance between compact classic styling and serious performance hardware. It has the ingredients of a car that can be brutally quick in a straight line, but the overdrive transmission setup and removable door bars suggest it was not built solely as a trailer queen race car. It seems to occupy that desirable middle ground where it can turn heads at a car show, make noise at a drag strip, and still be driven on the street with some level of comfort. Overall, this 1963 Chevy 2 Nova appears to be a thoughtfully built high-performance hardtop featuring a 383 small block, turbo 400 transmission with gear vendors overdrive, Ford 9-inch rear end, disc brakes, RC Comp wheels, and an 8.50 certified chassis with removable door bars. In my opinion, it is best suited for an enthusiast who wants a lightweight early Nova with real street and strip capability rather than a stock restoration. Something fast, intimidating, and mechanically serious while still being usable enough to enjoy beyond the starting line. Number 13. This 1967 Chevrolet Chevelle 300 Deluxe is the kind of car that instantly stands out because it takes a less common body style and turns it into a serious street and strip machine. Instead of being another SS Tribute or big money show car, this one starts with a genuine Chevelle 300 Deluxe post car and then leans hard into performance, which gives it a very different personality from the average mid-60s Chevelle. The seller identifies it as a real 1967 Chevelle 300 Deluxe V8 post car with a VIN beginning with 13,217, which matters because the 300 Deluxe two-door post cars have developed a strong following among enthusiasts who like lightweight, no-nonsense muscle platforms. They don't always get the same attention as super sports, but in many ways they're even cooler because they feel more raw, more purposeful, and less overexposed. Under the hood, this Chevelle has been transformed with a professionally built 383-stroker V8 producing roughly 450 horsepower. That's a very healthy power figure for a car of this size and weight, and it immediately shifts the focus from classic cruiser to real performance machine. A 383-stroker is a popular recipe because it offers a strong mix of torque, throttle response, and small block simplicity, making it a great fit for a car built to be both fast and usable. Backing the engine is a professionally built 4-speed transmission, which adds a much more involved driving experience than the automatic setup listed in the vehicle details might suggest. If the seller's description is accurate, this is a car meant to be driven aggressively, with a kind of hands-on feel that suits a street and strip build perfectly. The drivetrain is also said to be fresh, with only around 1,500 miles since completion, which is a major selling point because it means much of the expensive mechanical work has already been done and still has very limited use. The seller also notes that the body is straight, the underside is rust-free, and the car has been stored indoors. Those are extremely important details on a mid-60s GMA body, because power is one thing, but structural condition is what often determines whether a classic performance car is truly worth the money. A rust-free underside and straight body provide a much stronger foundation than a flashy car hiding corrosion underneath. Another major part of this listing is the inclusion of extra parts. Along with the car, the buyer reportedly gets an extra engine, an extra transmission, and additional components, plus a brand new Holley EFI system. That alone adds a lot of value because it opens up future possibilities. A buyer could keep the car as is with the carbureted 383, or potentially move toward a more modern EFI setup down the road without having to buy everything from scratch. In my opinion, this Chevelle is appealing because it doesn't try to be something it's not. It isn't pretending to be a Concours correct restoration, and it isn't relying on SS badges to sell itself. Instead, it sounds like a genuine post car that has been built with performance in mind and backed by real hardware. For the right buyer, that can be more exciting than a polished clone because it offers a more honest muscle car experience. At $39,000, the price will depend heavily on the quality of the engine and transmission build, as well as the overall finish of the car, but on paper it sounds like a serious package. A rust-free 1967 Chevelle body, a fresh 383-stroker making around 450 horsepower, a 4-speed, extra drivetrain parts, and a new Holley EFI system all add up quickly. For someone looking for a classic Chevrolet with real performance potential and a more uncommon body style, this 1967 Chevelle 300 Deluxe sounds like a very strong candidate. Number 14, 1968 Ford Fairlane 500 Fastback. The 1968 Ford Fairlane 500 Fastback sits in an interesting place in Ford's muscle car history. It doesn't always get the same spotlight as the Mustang or Torino, but for enthusiasts who know these cars, the Fairlane Fastback has a lot going for it. It carries the long, aggressive roofline and classic late 1960s Ford styling, while still offering the kind of compact muscle car personality that makes it appealing both as a driver and as a project with real character. This particular example appears to lean more toward the Restomod side than a factory-correct restoration, and honestly, that may be part of its appeal. The car is finished in yellow with a black interior, a combination that gives it a bold and unmistakably vintage presence. It also incorporates several visual elements associated with the 1969 Torino Cobra, including the C-stripe, Cobra grille, and rear trim details, which give it a slightly more aggressive look than a standard Fairlane 500. Under the hood is a 302 cubic inch Ford the 5th 8, believed to be from a 1974 model year. According to the seller, it features a mild camshaft, which should provide a slightly lopey idle and a more spirited feel without turning the car into an unruly race build. That engine is backed by a Ford Racing T5 5-speed manual transmission, and in my opinion, that's one of the most appealing upgrades on the entire car. Swapping in a modern-style 5-speed can completely change how a classic feels, especially on longer drives, because it adds both driver involvement and better highway manners compared to an older 3-speed setup. The exhaust system also sounds like it was chosen with attitude in mind. Hooker long-tube headers feeding into Flowmaster 40 series mufflers dumped ahead of the rear axle should give this Fairlane a very sharp, unmistakable muscle car sound. It's probably not subtle, but a car like this really isn't supposed to be. Inside, the car has a number of thoughtful upgrades that make it more enjoyable without completely abandoning its vintage feel. The Shelby-style wood-grain steering wheel adds some personality, while the Equus tachometer and auxiliary oil and temperature gauges give the driver better information than the stock setup alone. The seller also mentions a new instrument cluster lens, LED lighting, an aftermarket radio, and new carpet with rubber-backed insulation, all of which suggest the interior has been refreshed with both appearance and usability in mind. Cooling and reliability also seem to have been addressed with an aluminum Champion radiator, electric fan, and aluminum shroud. Those are the kinds of upgrades that may not be flashy, but they make a big difference if you actually plan to drive the car regularly rather than just park it at shows. What I personally like most about this Fairlane is that it feels like a car built to be driven and enjoyed, not just admired from a distance. It doesn't sound overly polished or over-restored. Instead, it comes across as a personalized, performance-oriented street machine with classic Ford looks and some smart modern upgrades where they matter most. Overall, I think this 1968 Ford Fairlane 500 Fastback offers a compelling mix of old-school style and updated drivability. The 5-speed transmission, upgraded cooling system, mild 302, and custom Torino-inspired touches make it more than just another vintage Ford. At an asking price of $50,000, it's clearly aimed at someone who values uniqueness, road manners, and personality over strict originality, and for the right buyer, that combination could be very appealing. Number 15. This 1989 Oldsmobile Cutlass. At just $800, this 1989 Oldsmobile Cutlass falls into a category of classic American cars that can still be surprisingly appealing for the right kind of buyer. It's not being sold as a showpiece, and it's definitely not pretending to be a fully restored survivor. Instead, it comes across as a simple, honest, budget-friendly older car that still runs and drives well, but clearly needs some cosmetic and comfort-related attention before it can be considered fully sorted. Located in Fayetteville, North Carolina, this Cutlass is described by the seller as a car that runs and drives great, and honestly, that's already the most important thing at this price point. When you're looking at an $800 vehicle, especially one that's pushing toward classic status, the biggest question is usually whether it actually moves under its own power and can function as a real car. According to the listing, this one does, which immediately gives it more value than a lot of cheap project cars that are basically just parts vehicles with a steering wheel. The seller is also fairly upfront about what it needs. It sounds like the biggest issues are not catastrophic mechanical failures, but rather the kind of age-related deterioration you'd expect from a late 1980s American coupe or sedan that has simply been around for a long time. Things like worn door gaskets, windows that need replacing, and a sagging headliner are all common problems on cars from this era. None of those issues are especially glamorous to fix, but they're also not unusual, and in many cases they're more annoying than they are truly serious. There are also a couple of small positives that help this listing. The battery is only 9 months old, and the tires are said to be good, which means the next owner may not have to immediately spend money on two of the most basic maintenance items. The air conditioning does need repair, and depending on the exact issue, that could be either a minor fix or something more involved. But at least the seller mentions it directly, which makes the ad feel a little more honest. What makes this Cutlass interesting to me is that it seems to occupy that in-between space where it's too old and worn to be considered a polished collectible, but still complete and functional enough to be useful. A lot of cars like this end up appealing to buyers who want a cheap second car, a nostalgic project, or simply an old-school American cruiser they can slowly improve over time without spending a fortune up front. In my opinion, this is the kind of car you buy because you like what it is, not because you expect perfection. If the drivetrain is genuinely solid and the car really does run and drive as well as the seller claims, then $800 is a very low cost of entry into a usable vintage Oldsmobile. Of course, it will still need work, and I wouldn't go into it expecting modern reliability or comfort. But for someone who enjoys older GM cars and doesn't mind putting some effort into cosmetics and interior rehab, there could be some value here. Overall, this 1989 Oldsmobile Cutlass looks like a cheap but running classic with honest flaws and enough life left in it to be worth considering. It's not a turnkey collectible, but as an inexpensive driver project or a nostalgic old-school cruiser, it has the kind of rough-around-the-edges charm that can still make an older car worth saving.